And still no champion. UFC 282 came and went. We have no title, no champion in the light heavyweight division. We'll talk about that. We'll recap all the action from that. Bellator 289, the Bellator Bantamweight Grand Prix. We'll talk about all that, as well as Liz Carmouche defending her title that she had just won in a rematch with Juliana Velasquez. We'll talk about UFC's final card of the year. We got UFC Vegas 66 finishing things up this week, as well as Fighters versus Media Part 2. We'll talk about that in Battleground. But first, go ahead and head over to FightersFirst.shop. You know what it is. Support the brand, support the merch, support Brandon. Get the Mechanic Collection and all the great officially licensed collections over at Fighters First. Let our apparel be a part of your story. I am Mike Ginn. That's the professional kickboxer, Brandon Cuttino. Brandon, we got a special guest today. You want to introduce him for me?
Yes, we do, down below, because he's on the bottom. I'm on top. That's usually always anyway when we spar. Is my good buddy, one of my training partners. He's an amazing martial artist. He's also an amazing instructor. He's a fellow podcaster as well. Commentator is James Leonelli. Like I say, he's one of the fellow other tall people that I can usually go with that can kind of give me fits. So it's just a pleasure just to have him hang out with us today.
Anytime, my man. The pleasure is mine. Though I will say I'm usually on top when we grapple.
That is true. That is true.
I can switch it. I can switch that and put you on top. That's not a problem. I can make that happen just to make Brandon's life a little bit of a hell. Because it's always fun to having a new voice in here. You know, I can't just keep beating him up by myself every week. I need help. So
listen, I have beat up that fist with my skull many a times.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Of course, James, you know, one of the lead instructors, as well as owner of Smithtown, Tiger Schulman's, commentator for Flex Fight Series. We'll talk about Flex Fight Series coming up this Saturday. Of course, our good friend, Fighters First, Cedric Goodrich is going to be on that card. So we'll talk about that towards the end of the show. But guys, we got a lot to kind of decompress this week. Bellator 289, UFC 282, and then, of course, we got to make our picks coming up as well later. But we're going to go ahead and start with Bellator this week. Bellator 289, Raufeon Stots versus Danny Sabatello. A 5-round battle. Of course, the other side of the Grand Prix, we had Patchy Mix taking care of business. So we'll talk about that. Liz Carmouche defending her title, all of that good stuff. Let's go ahead and jump right into the main event, guys. Brandon, I will start with you. Stots, I mean, I'm not going to go as far as to say Stots shut up Danny Sabatello. Danny did kind of have a little bit of a temper tantrum when he left the cage, but it was a razor-close fight. Depending on how you scored it, I don't think anybody really thought it was 50-45, but depending on how you scored it, that was a close decision. What did you think of the fight? And break down what you thought of it.
Yeah, like I said, I had Raufeon Stots winning the fight, 3-2. Like I said, I had picked him before the fights, and it's basically how I thought it would play out. I thought Stots would be better standing up. I thought he could nullify Sabatello's wrestling, because really that's all Sabatello had was his wrestling. He didn't really, he didn't really have any stand up to kind of give Stots any fits. Stots was really in control when it was standing, but then when he got to the ground, Sabatello was just he was basically just laying and praying, like how they used to do back in the day. And Raufeon Stots was staying active. He was throwing shots from the bottom. He was being the more aggressor one, still on the bottom. He was having basically what we call an attacking guard. He was throwing punches, throwing elbows. He was looking for submissions, and to me, that is why he got the W.
I think it was kind of a thing where, and look, both of us picked Stots in this fight. It was kind of a thing where Stots had the control when he was on his feet, but Danny had to control a lot of the fight with his wrestling. He had to control as far as not doing anything with it. I told somebody offline, I said, if Danny Sabatello knew one submission hold, that fight would have been over in the first or second round. The way he kind of controlled the top position, Stots was constantly, sweeping and getting back to his feet and doing things he had to. But let's be real. If Danny Sabatello knew any submission whatsoever, he would have won that fight. And it's his own fault that he lost it. James, what you think of that whole situation in that fight?
Well, one thing we know for sure is Douglas Crosby lost.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Well, he's under investigation from Mohegan now as well.
And who can blame him? But nonetheless, it's one thing that I think was kind of the theme of the weekend is wrestling enough by itself? When the number one criteria is damage, if all you're going to do is take somebody down and you're not going to try to finish the fight, or you're just going to push him into the fence and not try to finish the fight. I'm talking to you, Jared Gordon. Can you really expect the decision just out of that? And obviously, the answer is no.
Yeah, and we'll obviously we're definitely going to touch on that Patty Pimblett, Jared Gordon thing next segment. But in this fight, like I said, and Brandon, you can attest to this. We talked about it last week. It was really whose will would win. We knew Sabatello had the wrestling ability, but the only striking he had is a front kick, which I don't even think he landed. He just used it to kind of keep distance.
Yep.
And a jab, and that was it. And that worked in his last couple fights, worked well. And honestly, I would not have been mad if he had won a 48-47 decision in this fight, because he did have control for a large number of this fight. But Stots did all the damage, all the significant strikes, all the other variables. So I think it was a good decision. You know, the whole Crosby thing, yeah, he's under investigation now. Mohegan's investigating him. I wouldn't be surprised if Nevada investigates him. I don't know, but we know how. Let's be real. Judges never get punished. We've seen it with how many judges and how many bad MMA decisions, and those guys are judging the very next week.
It's a crime. It's a crime. They're literally trying to rob those people of half of their livelihood, and that there should be the fact that we move on to the next weekend, and at that point the old bad decisions in the back of our brain, we're not even thinking about it. Therein lies the problem. It's why they get away with it month after month after month.
Oh yeah, the news cycle moves so fast, and especially since the pandemic, where we started having fights every weekend to like make up for the time lost. Now there's so many fights. The fact that I'm honestly surprised that the only fights we have after this weekend is the New Year's Rising card with Bellator and Rising. Like, I'm surprised there's actually taking time off for the holidays, because they powered through so much of the last couple of years, just nonstop events. That how can you sit there and talk about the MMA decision from Peter Yan and Sean O'Malley to now what's happened at 282 and what's happened to this show? And let's be real, we'll talk about it in a second, but this wasn't the only questionable decision judging on Bellator. There was two other fights that were very questionable as well. But we'll go ahead and move into the co-main event. We both called it. Liz Carmouche. I called it after the show. I had to put a little splash on because I did forget last week to make my picks. I got so hyped up moving on, talking with Brandon last week. But Liz Carmouche, she was a veteran. She knew what she was doing, and she left no doubt. No early stoppage this time. Velasquez tapped out in the second round. James, I'll start with you. I know you didn't get a chance to watch too much of it, but Liz Carmouche, this resurgence in her fights, what do you think of all that?
Well, first off, the armbar that she finished Juliana with was just so impressive. She's such a physically imposing specimen, Liz Carmouche, at that weight class. When you see her back, do you guys see that perspective of her back, of her lats spread as she was pulling on that arm? I was like, Jesus, don't let that lady anywhere near my elbow. Oh my God. Juliana's lucky that arm stayed attached. That was so impressive. And her wrestling has always been really high level, but the problem is she was at that very high level of wrestling that was countered by the very high level of judo of Ronda Rousey, and she kind of hit that buzzsaw early in her UFC career. And when that was the proverbial glass ceiling, when Ronda Rousey was the proverbial glass ceiling in the UFC, there was nowhere else for her to go. She didn't have the skill sets to compete with Ronda on the ground. And that's where
let's be clear, though. She had Ronda in deep trouble early in that fight.
Absolutely. That was in the air. To be fair, Ronda was holding her up in the air. It was a rear naked choke, as I recall. And she also almost exposed Ronda.
Oh, yeah. She was pulling it down. You're right.
Yeah. She was. It was almost a Frank Trigg, Matt Hughes situation.
It was almost the first fight and almost the first wardrobe malfunction all in the same night.
Exactly. But again, she gave her a great test early on, but you could see once Ronda was able to really impose her judo, it was very difficult for Liz to do anything. But Liz has always been a standout wrestler. You know, she's always a little undersized for 135, and I think she's kind of found her home here at 125, and she looks enormous. Yeah,
Brandon, the fight was pretty much what it was. I think it ruffled some feathers after the fight of who should be next. She called out like former champion, McFarlane and some other bigger names. But who really should be next for Liz?
Oh man, we all know what it is, man. It's my girl Vitamin D, man. Deanna Bennett. That's who it should be.
I gotta let you say it. I can't just sit there and force feed you the words. I gotta let you say
man.
them.
Dude, you know who it is, dude, man. Dude, Deanna Bennett is the one who should be next. She's on a winning streak. She's looked good her last few fights. You know, anybody you put in front of her, she's got her hand raised. She really should be the next person. It should be Deanna Bennett. You know, so I mean, because my thing is, like I say, you know, she already beat Watanabe. She already beat her, and she beat her handedly. You know, she just
knocked her out.
Yeah, exactly. You know, she just beat Velasquez as well. So I'm saying the only person that really is next is Deanna Bennett. So to me, Deanna Bennett should be next.
I mean, I don't think McFarland's too far fetched because, you know, McFarland's kind of on this retirement tour.
Well, I mean, also too, but she was somehow fighting McFarland at 135, not even at 125. She wants to fight McFarland at 135 in Hawaii, and then after that fight, that's when she would fight Watanabe for the 125 belt, and I think she wanted to do that in Japan as well.
Yeah, I think this is a thing where, yes, Deanna is probably the most deserving, but you know, we talk about McFarland on her kind of retirement tour if she's not already retired. And Liz is 38, and she's kind of like, you know, she's had this resurgence and she has this fresh breath of life into her career, but she's 38 and she's kind of wanting to do what she wants to do before she finishes up as well. And while competitively, you may say Deanna Bennett's next, you know, somebody like Liz Carmouche has kind of earned the right to call her shot for as much as she's given to women's mixed martial arts over her career. So if she wants to hold up the division, I think Scott Coker's going to let her, to be honest. We've seen Cyborg kind of hold up the division and do whatever she wants. Scott tends to kind of let the women do what they want. So I wouldn't be surprised. James, do you think Deanna gets the next shot?
I would hope so. I mean, interpersonally, I've met Deanna Bennett. One of her teammates fought at a Flex show, and I got to interact with her a little bit the night of the fight card. And it was fun. I walked up like, Deanna Bennett. And I'm like, I'm James, one of the commentators. And one of her teammates is like, wow, you're a really educated commentator. I'm like, well, I have to be to do what I do. But just the person that she is, if you guys watched when she was on the Ultimate
Not necessarily. Fighter, I'm not very educated. I do great.
Well, I do the analyst stuff. I got to break down the martial arts, so I got to know who they're training with. Anyways, if you guys watch the season of The Ultimate Fighter that Deanna was on, that big personality that she is on TV, she was exactly that same person interpersonally. She was just so much fun. She's just sitting there staring me in the eyes, and she's like, I want to make it uncomfortable. I want to make it weird. It's okay. I'm sitting there laughing my face off while interacting with her. She's just such a warm, happy personality. I want nothing but the best for her. So I would love it if she got the next shot.
Yeah, like I'm saying, like I have no problem if she wants to do that 135 fight with McFarland, but if she wants to defend her belt, who should it be next? It should be Deanna Bennett. So I'm saying if she wants to do McFarland fight first, but if she's gonna defend her 125 belt, it should be Deanna Bennett. It should be Deanna Bennett and not it should be nobody else.
I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with you. I don't see Scott. Like, I don't see Scott stopping her from doing what she wants to do. I just don't. I think Scott Coker's going to let Liz call her own shot, and that's going to be what we get. In the other side of the Grand Prix, setting up the finals, Stots versus Mix. Brandon, you doubted him.
Oh, my goodness, man.
But Patchy Mix, once again, took care of business against Magomedov and looked very impressive doing it. He looked great against Horiguchi. You talked about his striking maybe being a question mark. Well, he didn't leave much question last fight. He didn't leave much question in this fight. What did you think of this performance?
Yeah, no, man. Patchy Mix definitely. His stand-up definitely looked better than it has ever before. He looked real good. And then plus two, man, to me, he won this fight with his anti-wrestling. With his takedown was, he did a nice hook sweep that really landed him into the guillotine, in which of course he put his opponent night.
Yeah, literally put him to sleep. Like they had to wake him back up. James, what'd you think of that whole thing?
Well, I thought it was kind of eerie that we got another guillotine to sleep this particular weekend of December when it happens to be the anniversary of when John Jones did that to Lyoto Machida and then just dropped him on his face and walked away. So definitely an eerie parallel in that regard for sure.
It actually happened in Luke's fight league last weekend as well, in their championship fight with Castillo and Martinez. And ironically, the ref wasn't the one that stopped it. It was the corner that threw in the towel because the ref those refs down there just aren't trained quite the way that some of the American refs are. But the ref didn't stop it. The corner had to throw it in. And when they got the hold off, Martinez was out. Like, he was late. It took a while for them to bring him back. So always scary when somebody gets put to sleep like that. But go ahead.
That's terrifying. It's a terrifying. That's just a terrifying moment. I don't know if you guys ever had that experience having someone go to sleep in your arms, but that is pretty. That's terrifying. I put a couple people to sleep in my time, and that moment, especially if they like shake awake and stuff like that. But again, just a great performance overall by Patchy Mix. I think that Brandon said it perfectly, talking about the anti-wrestling. Definitely the story of that performance for sure.
I can't say I've ever had the privilege to do it to someone else, but it has happened to me once. So, and you wake up like, how long was I out? And it's only like maybe a second or two, but you're totally like, what just happened? And so, yeah, not a fun feeling at all. That happened to me during wrestling back in high school during a practice one time. Somebody got me in a rear naked choke. I was like, what? Oh, shit. And I was like, okay. I didn't know what it was at the time. I know now. But yeah, Patchy Mix and Stots is going to be a fantastic final. Brandon, I called it in the beginning. I think you said it was going to be Stots and Horiguchi. But I called it in the beginning. I think Patchy Mix is taking this whole thing. I know that's going to make our boy at Tiger Showman's a little bit happy, Solomon Renfro, because him and Patchy go way back. So I definitely think Patchy's taking this one. We'll see when that comes to blow who you pick, but I'm already on Team Patchy on that one. So real quick, the rest of the card, your pick, Rasta, got the win over Anthony Adams. Kind of a questionable decision. Talking about questionable decisions, Joanne over Keelholz, split decision. A lot of MMA media had it the other way for Denise. Jalil Willis got the win over Kyle Crutchmer. I don't really know what to make of Crutchmer anymore because he was kind of this undefeated train. And now he's kind of gotten derailed a couple times. Lencioni versus Cody Law. My pick, I lost. But did I? Because really, I think Cody Law won that fight, and I'm not even being biased. A lot of MMA media thought on MMA decisions that he won that fight as well. If you look at it, I think all three, Combat Press, Sherdog, and Sean Sheehan all scored it for Cody Law. Sheehan even gave it 30-27 for Cody Law. So I think the first round was Lencioni, but I think the other two rounds were clearly Cody. So very big upset, in my opinion, in that one. Eccles got another big upset, knocked out Pat Downey. We were hyping up Pat Downey last week. Well, he needs to take a step back and reassess. Kai Kamaka's looked great since coming over to Bellator. He got another win over Kevin Bohm. Lombardo over Lemminger, another guy who was full of hype, and now he just got knocked out. So see what happens with him. And then Cass Bell and Jared Scoggins. Brandon, what were some other highlights on that card that you really thought stood out?
I mean, just, Dalton Roster getting another W, man, just staying undefeated. And then, like I said, you talk about the Denise Keelholz fight. Me, I'm a big fan of Miss Dynamite since her kickboxing days. Like I said, those girls, they both just came to just stand and bang, and that's what they were doing. Me, man, I'm always going to ride with Keelholz, but the judges, they saw it the other way.
Crazy, too, because it was 30-27, 27-30, and 30-27. Yep. So it was really like whatever judge was looking for whatever thing, controls, damage, whatever the case is. James, what were some takeaways you had from Bellator 289?
I just keep going back to that armbar from Liz Carmouche. I have that image stuck in my mind of just how jacked she looked as she was trying to take Juliana Velasquez's arm home with her. That to me, that stands out in my mind, even above the highway robbery that Douglas Crosby tried to commit. Above all that, just if you guys got to find the image where you can see her back and her lats are just spread. Oh my God, she looks like an absolute specimen, and it just looks like raw power.
I mean, Alex Soto tells me all the time when we talk off air from Crossing Borders, our other show, because he's part of that whole Team Hurricane Awesome system with Manolo Hernandez and all that stuff. Liz Carmouche dominates the gym. She dominates the gym. Anybody who steps in there is just getting dominated, and she doesn't even take it easy in practice. Like, she goes hard all the time. If you want to make it in this business, you got to go through her. And she just doesn't take it easy on no one. So Liz Carmouche has earned everything she's gotten. I'm super excited for her to be finishing up her career, whether it's now or 3 or 4 years from now. The way she's doing it, especially after the whole UFC ending, with Valentina and some other stuff, and obviously the Ronda thing, and like she's come over and dominated in Bellator, so it's good to see. And one of the good people in the sport, to be honest with you. All right, guys, let's switch gears. I know everybody wants to hear it. UFC 282, Blachowicz versus Ankalaev for the vacant light heavyweight title, not interim, but vacant. We had that go down. We had Paddy Pimblett and Jared Gordon. Both those fights were elevated because we lost our main event when Yuri had to pull out with the monster shoulder injury, drop his title. We had a number of other great things, 10 finishes on this card. And guys, before we talk about these fights, I want to say this. I'm part of this. You guys are probably both part of it as well. MMA fans are so fickle. They're so fickle. Literally, we had a night with 10 finishes, not to mention 2, like whether you agree with the decisions or not, 2 very close fights in the main and co-main event. And people walk away because they didn't get the decision they want, saying how horrible this card was. This was a fantastic card. If you stopped at fight number 10 with Ponzinibbio getting the comeback win against Moreno, that's a great card, like right there. And then because you didn't get the decisions you want, which, by the way, I don't think either decision was as bad as the media was trying to play that up. But because people didn't get the decisions they want, and all of a sudden, oh, it's such a bad card. It was a horrible ending after a great year. Come on, stop it. James, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. Main event, Jan Blachowicz, Magomed Ankalaev for the light heavyweight title. What did you think of that fight? Of course, it ended in a split draw.
I'll be honest.
How did you score it?
I don't think a draw was a necessarily surprising call. I had Jan winning rounds 1, 2, 3. And I mean, especially 3. I don't know. I forget what judge I saw gave Ankalaev 3. How do you give the guy round 3 when he gets dropped by leg kicks practically? Like, I don't understand how you give him that. But nonetheless,
it was, Michael Bell that had it for him that one.
I don't know what he was watching. But nonetheless, I can see the argument for Blachowicz 1, 2, 3. And then if you want, I could see how you could give Ankalaev round 5 at 10-8. I could see that. So understanding we had 3 rounds and then a 10-9 and a 10-8.
I'm sorry, Derek Cleary gave Ankalaev round 3. I was reading it backwards. My bad.
No worries. But nonetheless, I could see the argument for Blachowicz winning 3-2 or the draw. I'm good. I wouldn't have been super surprised with either. I don't know how Ankalaev thought he did enough to win that fight. When you give away rounds 1, 2, 3, and then what, you wrestled them pretty good for rounds 4 and 5, and you thought that was enough to win the whole thing? I'm not sure he could be so impassioned.
Ironically, Brandon, so Michael Bell scored it first 3 rounds. All of them, except also Michael Bell and D'Amato both gave the first 3 rounds to Jan. Derek Cleary gave round 3 to Ankalaev, and then Michael Bell gave 10-9, 10-9. Cleary gave 10-9, 10-8, and D'Amato gave 10-9, 10-8. If Michael Bell had ruled round 5 a 10-8, which it clearly should have been, then we're talking about a majority draw. It's still a draw, but a little bit different call on how they did it. In that case, Jan doesn't win any of the scorecards. But I personally had it the same way Sal D'Amato had it. Blachowicz first 3 rounds, Ankalaev last 2 with a 10-8 at the end. We got a draw. What did you think?
I actually had Ankalaev winning the fight. I actually gave him the first round as well. I thought he won the first, the fourth, and the fifth. I gave Blachowicz the second and third. I know the first round was a little bit close, but I kind of leaned towards Ankalaev on that one. I mean, to me, man, this is a tale of two fights, man. Two basically, man, with your fight IQ. Ankalaev, you already saw, like, after that third round, man, his corner was on him about, like, yo, what are you doing? Let's just take this guy down and take care of business. You saw in that 4th and 5th round when he finally went for those takedowns, he was good to go. The first round, he didn't go for any takedowns. He just tried to stand with Jan. In the second round, I think he did. I think he went for 2 takedowns, didn't get him. You know, and you just saw Jan just taking care of business on that leg. You know, like I've always been saying, Master Tiger Showman has always said, man, you can win a fight with a jab and a good low kick. And Jan, he definitely had that low kick dealing. But the thing was, like, he didn't follow up. Like, he wasn't able to kind of get it off in the 4th and the 5th round because he was basically kind of on the ground. You know, but that's why you want to have that jab going. That way you can keep that distance. Somebody tries to run in at you, you stop him with the jab. But he wasn't able to do that in the 4th and 5th round. So to me, like I said, I had Ankalaev winning the fight, you know, 3 rounds to 2. But, you know, again, I'm not a judge, and we've just been talking about, you know, MMA judging.
Yeah, and look, I think it comes down to that first round. I think that's 100% on how you judge the first round. Jan did, I think, a little bit more damage. Maybe Ankalaev was more active. I mean, it really on how you judge a fight, right? First round was it. But I don't think it was a robbery by any means necessary. And then on top of that, you sit there and realize that Jan gassed after the third round. He trained for a 3-round fight. He did not train for a 5-round fight. That's on him. I think personally, I think you should always train for a 5-round fight because especially when you're in that position, you never know. But also, it makes you stronger through 3 rounds, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, both you guys can tell me I'm wrong. But you want to be strong in that third round, whether you're training for a 3-round fight or a 5-round fight. After that third round, Jan gassed. And Ankalaev took full advantage, got him down, took advantage, did some ground and pound. But this goes back to, and we'll talk about it in the next fight too, the old adage, if you don't want to get robbed by the judges, finish the fight. Because Ankalaev could have finished that fight in the 5th round, and he couldn't get Blachowicz out of there, who was just super tough and would not quit. But if you finish the fight, there is no judge. There is no bad judging. That's the end of that discussion. Now all of a sudden we have a fallout from this because now neither guy is getting the next shot. Like we thought, okay, maybe Ankalaev or Blachowicz won them or they'll rematch it, whatever. Nope. Next pay-per-view down in Rio, it's Glover and Jamal Hill going for the title now. So these guys had their chance, and Dana just immediately moved on. So you think maybe one of these guys gets the matchup after Glover and Hill, and then we'll go from there. When Yuri's ever ready to come back, he'll get his shot as well. But a lot of fallout from that. I'd love to hear you guys' comments at home. Let us know. Was it a robbery? Was it a legit decision? Yeah, I mean, and the sad thing is, we normally say what's next for a lot of these fighters. We know what's next for these guys. They're probably fighting each other again. Like, at the very least, Jan's next fight probably be Ankalaev. If Ankalaev fights somebody else, maybe I could see that. But if both guys want the title shot, maybe that's next. But really, we don't know anything until after Glover and Jamal Hill fight at 283. Like that, we're stuck waiting now. Co-main event, guys. This is going to be fun. Paddy the Baddy, Paddy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon. Paddy got the win. Pretty much 29-28 across the board. Brandon, was this a robbery?
I mean, dude, I don't use that word, man. It is what it is, but like I told you, Jared Gordon won that fight. I mean, the only things where this is crazy is like again, it's all about how you want to look at it. But to me, all 3 judges gave Paddy Pimblett the first round. If you look at that fight, there's no way he won that first round.
Chris Lee gave Jared Gordon the first round.
Oh, well, I'm saying like that right there is the only round. Like that round is defended Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon basically boxed Paddy Pimblett's ears off, and somehow these other 2 judges are giving it to Paddy Pimblett. Don't know how you go that way, but to me, man, Jared Gordon, took that fight. He won the first 2 rounds, and I'll give Paddy Pimblett the third because again, we talk about Jared Gordon really didn't do anything with that takedown.
So I personally think Jared Gordon won round 1 in round 3, and Paddy clearly won round 2. But I'm not upset with this decision because round 3 was a matter of control versus damage, and Jared controlled most of the fight, pinned him up against the cage with his wrestling. He didn't take any risks. He kind of was coasting, unfortunately, I hate to agree with what Dana said, but he was kind of coasting. And whenever Paddy got free, Paddy would fire off a few shots and get the best of him. I'm not mad at somebody that scored round 3 for Paddy Pimblett. But James, let's look at these scorecards real quick. Crosby had rounds 1 and 2 for Pimblett, round 3 for Gordon, which is kind of opposite of what if any of us were talking about, pretty much, period. That's the guy, of course, we talked about from the Bellator card. Chris Lee was also kind of weird. He gave the first round to Gordon, but then gave the last 2 rounds to Paddy. Ron McCarthy gave the first 2 rounds to Paddy and the last round to Gordon. So the only question is first and third round, which arguably I think most people would agree Jared Gordon looked his best in the first round, landing left hand after left hand. James, what do you think of the fight?
I certainly agree with you about Jared Gordon's boxing in that first round. And again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. The days of just wrestling alone to win a fight, I think they're gone. the judging criteria, if number one thing is supposed to be damage. So if you're just hugging someone and pushing their butt into the cage and you're expecting that to count as damage, when the other guy gets free, hits you with 5 shots, and then you push his butt against the fence again, you can't get mad when the judges don't score that control time over the damage. And I mean, as far as the second round, I didn't have a stopwatch. I didn't check to see how long Jared's control time was versus Paddy's time out striking. But nonetheless, the things I remember more about rounds 2 and 3, I remember Jared hugging him into the cage and Paddy hitting him whenever they were free. And to me, like, you got to be trying to win the fight. I think wall and stall is a good 2010 tactic, but it isn't 2010 anymore.
Yeah, it also reminded me of the TJ Dillashaw fight against Sandhagen, where he kind of did the same thing late in the fight, trying to hold on, keep Sandhagen from getting off when he was getting tired. But I mean, round 2 is like the only one that we don't question, right? Like, everybody's pretty much sure Paddy won round 2. Round 1, I thought everybody thought Jared Gordon won round 1, but 2 of the judges gave it to Paddy. And then round 3, when I thought maybe it was more Paddy, 2 of the judges gave it to Gordon. So I don't really know what some MMA judges are looking at, but it does come down to finish the fight. If Paddy finishes the fight, if Jared finishes the fight, we're not talking about this.
See, and I agree with you to a certain degree, but it is a lot easier to say finish the fight than it actually is to finish the fight. I'd say continue to try to finish the fight rather than just push the person into the fence and hope their control's enough.
And you would think also Jared Gordon had the better gas tank.
Yeah.
Because Paddy does these massive weight cuts before every fight. So by the third round, he's just like coasting. Like, you would think Jared Gordon would have the energy to go out and do more damage in the third round. I know finishing the fight is obviously easier said than done. I'm just saying the age-old philosophy is like, them judges can't screw you if you finish the fight.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to Paddy Pimblett and his striking, which he was losing early on. Jared Gordon, his left hand was landing at will. Later at the fight, Jared stopped throwing that left hand. And I don't know if you heard it. I don't know what it is. I thought Jared won the fight, but I don't think it was a robbery by any means. And I think that we've seen way worse this year. I think Peter Yan and O'Malley, depending on how you look at it, was a worse decision. I heard somebody sit there and go online and say this was one of the worst decisions of all time. I'm sorry. I'm old enough to remember Johnny Hendricks and GSP. So hello. Let's talk about some MMA judging. Brandon, how many times have we had Battleground talking about MMA judging just in the last year?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, people. Stop being fickle. You're going to watch the fights in a couple weeks. This week, you're going to watch them all. You're not going to go watch horse racing or whatever else sport you said you were going to jump to because you didn't like what you saw. Because that's just not – first of all, it's just really disrespectful to the rest of this card. Really disrespectful. Let me run down the results, and I'm going to go ahead and get you guys' opinions on a couple more things. Ponzinibbio, we already talked about it. Big comeback in the third round against Alex Morano. Shout out to Alex Morano. Took that fight on short notice and still put a hell of a performance on. Duplessis with a wrestling clinic over Darren Till. I do want to say I give Darren Till credit for hanging in there the first round. He came back, had a great second round. Third round, he kind of was gassed and he tapped. Like, that just really, to me, that was that. I'll get you guys' opinion. I see you guys ready to talk about it. I'll get your opinion. Topuria looked great against Bryce Mitchell. I'm sad for Bryce that he has to pull out that he had the flu before that, and that was why he should have never took the fight. Bryce, I'm sorry. Topuria was going to whoop your ass anyway. Topuria is a force at featherweight, and I think he could fight at a couple other divisions. He's very tiny, like height-wise, but that kid has dynamite in his hands, and he's a black belt jiu-jitsu guy that people keep slipping on. He has 8 submissions, including this one. He has only 4 knockouts. So y'all talk about his striking. He's actually more of a submission specialist. But that's that. The kid, Rosas Jr., with a big, impressive debut against Jay Perrin. Rosenstrike with a big knockout over Chris Dawkins. Not a good month for the Dawkins brothers. Shabazian got back in the win column against Lungi Abula, big TKO. Chris Curtis, he lost that first round, came back with a big knockout in the second round. Brandon's big Billy Q got the damage done. TKO in the second round over Alexander Hernandez. My pick didn't go so well. I hyped up King Eric Silva. TJ Brown came out and showed there's levels to this. He had a great performance. TJ's always super tough, so it's not really surprising, but I think Eric Silva will make some noise in the featherweight division as we go on. And then Cameron Saman versus Steven Kozlow, TKO in the 3rd round. James, what were some things that really stood out to you on this card?
I mean, you'd be remiss not to point out just how awesome Raul Rojas Jr. looked. Man, the second he got his hands on
he looks like he's at least 35. That dude can't be 18.
Like, somebody check that birth certificate. Brandon will tell you, we just had our Tiger.
He's got a deeper voice than I do.
Seriously. And man, he's got some man strength. He grabbed the hold of Jay, and it was very obvious how strong he was. Even I think it was DC. Was like, man, the kid is strong. The kid is strong. And he certainly looked it.
And that's a bantamweight.
Yeah, seriously.
He looked like a lightweight.
Absolutely. My heart breaks for Bryce Mitchell because I love him as a character. You know, I mean, I gotta love a guy who pulls a twister. Number one, I gotta. And just I love him as a character. I remember him from The Ultimate Fighter. He's a personality on social media and so forth. And I just didn't want his flame to go out. Not that I cared skill wise as much. It was more just I love him as a character, and I wanted him to keep winning, so he'd get more opportunities to go out there and be his crazy self.
I mean, he's not done by any means.
Oh no, not at all, not even close. I could see the look in Darren Till's eyes the second Duplessis took him down. There was a look in his face like, I thought we weren't going to do this. I thought we had a gentleman's agreement that we're going to stand here and punch each other. Didn't you get the memo from the Wonderboy fight? We're just going to stand here and punch each other. He almost looked at Duplessis with a little bit of disdain, like, bro, I thought we agreed to a boxing fight. And you're very right. I think by that 3rd round, I don't know if it was just lungs had enough, but I also know you could tell psychologically he had enough. The second he turned over, Duplessis didn't even have the choke in, and the arm was as soon around his throat. The second it was around his throat, he started tapping. And, who can blame him after the kind of adversity he put up with early? Who could blame him for trying to find a way out at that point?
I was going to say, because the guy went through hell that 1st round.
Exactly. And kudos to the referee for not stopping that fight, because a lot of lesser referees would have stopped that fight based on some of the things that were happening. It was Mark Smith. And, he was communicating with the referee greatly, which I disagree with the idea of stopping and talking to the referee mid-fight. That's always a dumb idea. But Mark Smith would tell him fight back, and he'd start advancing his position. And to his credit, Mark Smith wouldn't jump in and look to stop the fight. He gave him a chance to fight out of it. And it led to like a really awesome fight.
I think that's just Darren's fault, because you can talk to somebody without actually looking at them. You could be like, yeah, ref, I'm good. Yeah, ref, I'm good. You don't got to actually literally look and talk to him. Like,
it was so funny because he was turning his head like 90 degrees. I'm good, bro. You don't have to stop the fight. I'm okay.
And then he get punched like 3 more times.
Yeah, exactly. It was crazy. And you're definitely right about Alex Morono putting on that amazing. He put on a clinic for those first 2 rounds.
Yeah,
spectacular. Brandon, what did you see that stood out to you?
Yeah,
I appreciate the segue, James.
My fight pick, with Billy Q and Alex Hernandez. Alex Hernandez came out looking good in that 1st round, but Billy Q, man, he has that cardio. He just kept on pushing it on Alex Hernandez. Alex Hernandez got weathered down, and boom, Billy Q was able to get that finish. And also too, like we said, Alex Moreno, like I said, he was dominant. He was winning. He had that W in the bag, but then Ponzinibbio came back in the 3rd round, got that finish. I mean, kudos to both guys, because like I say, Ponzinibbio, he had somebody else that he was going to fight. He took this fight on short week's notice, different style, different stance. So maybe it took him a little while, to kind of get set. I mean, you saw in that fight, he was working the body the entire time, working the body, and that's what set up for the finish. He faked going to the body, came over up top, boom, he got the job done.
Yeah, I think Billy looked great. I mean, Chris Curtis, obviously that big knockout over Bakley, who was winning the fight. He just threw a kick in the wrong place, left himself open, and right down the pike came Chris Curtis. And I want to shout out to Edmund Shabazian. We've been, Shabazian was a top prospect, hit a tough skid. To come back and get a win when people were ready to cut you, like that's a big deal. And then, man, I don't know what's up with the Dawkins brothers. They might have to have some holiday come to Jesus moments, because neither one has had a good run lately. Dawkins has gotten knocked out a couple. Chris has gotten knocked out a couple times. Kyle's gotten knocked out a couple times. These guys might have to find their passion a little bit and get back in the training room and do what they got to do, because both of them have a ton of potential, but neither one are getting it done with the elite fighters in the division. So, and then we talk about Morono, but Ponzinibbio too. Like, he got a last second replacement. He wasn't planning for him. So, shout out to him for, he got rushed the first couple rounds, didn't really know what to do, hung in there. Third round got the finish. So great performance for Santiago. So
I'm like, did I not just say that? Like, did I not just say that? This guy's still messed up.
I'm saying my opinion too, bro. Damn. See what I'm talking about, James? See what I'm glad to have a third voice?
I just said the exact same thing, and he just said it like I didn't say it.
Do I have to be a referee too? I'm already an instructor. I'm already a commentator. I got to be a referee too.
Oh my God! And then Bryce Mitchell will be back because look, let's be real. He lost to a top contender. He's already like that Andre Fili fight was one of the fights like of a lifetime. Like that was such a great fight. He beat Barboza. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. He'll bounce back just fine. All right. Speaking of fighters versus media, let's go ahead and jump into Battleground. Me and Brandon going toe to toe. Got James in here to kind of referee this one, but he can jump in as well. All three of us kind of have strong opinions on a lot of things. This one I don't think is any different. You heard us last time talk about fighters versus media. It was Brendan Schaub and Ariel Helwani, and I really hate the universe for making me take Ariel Helwani's side. Not once, but now I'm going to have to do it twice. Like, what is wrong with the universe? Why are you guys doing this to me? But that said, Paddy Pimblett and Ariel Helwani started up a new feud. I know James mentioned off air, Conor and Joe Rogan, another look at the angles of this thing. But it kind of goes back to, I mean, it really, as far as Ariel goes, it goes back to Dana versus Ariel and every fighter taking Dana's side because they want to get moved up the food chain. Like, that's not a surprise. Everybody wants to kiss Dana's ass because he's the head of he's the president of the biggest organization in MMA, and they want that job. That's not surprising to me. In this case, Ariel had the receipts, right? Like, Ariel had the voicemail of Paddy calling, they're like, oh, can I get an interview? Can I get an interview? And then all of a sudden his manager's like, yeah, but we charge for that. Well, I'm sorry to tell you guys at home if you don't understand how this works. And I'm not going to say there's never been paid interviews because there are plenty of paid interviews. It does happen. I can talk from my own personal experience. I have never paid for an interview. Why? Because I'm not only giving exposure to the person I'm interviewing, I'm also giving them a chance to plug whatever they're doing. So it's a free.
I'm not getting paid for this?
No, sorry. Unless Brandon wants to slide you $5 of training, I don't really know what to tell you. But it's just not happening. Like, we give you exposure, we give you a chance to plug it. In the show, you will see James come on and tell us all about Flex Fight Series coming on this weekend. And we're going to be awesome to hear that because one of our guys is fighting as well. But that said, Dave Letterman, Jay Leno, all these stuff, they may give him a lot of stuff in the green room or whatever, some parting gifts saying thank you for coming on my show. And we do benefit. We get ratings, we get views, we get whatever. But a lot of small-time guys like me, we don't get paid for this unless our YouTube gets monetized. Ariel makes most of his stuff off streams and views, and he makes it being monetized. But when Ariel started back in the day on MMA fighting, he wasn't really getting paid but minimum wage to do what he was doing because he loved it. He worked his way up to become a big name. And now fighters want to come on his show because they know they can get exposure by going on his show. It works both ways. Paddy, who's been kind of two-faced this whole time, he's a great fighter, but let's be real. His personality has always been hot and cold when it comes to media, when it comes to who he's kissing ass, who he's fighting with. He always plays both sides. He's very two-faced. If he's in the aisle talking with you, he's your friend. When he's behind the back, he's talking shit about you. That's all been caught on camera, whether it's fighters or media. And then he goes on a podcast with Dana White and just totally bashes Ariel about being a hanger-oner, how if it wasn't for the fighters, he wouldn't have a career. I'm sorry, Paddy, that goes both ways. If a tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it, did it fall? Nobody knows because they don't care. It wasn't on TV. If James is calling a fight on Flex Fight and that thing is not televised, do people care? Yeah, friends and family care. But the national media is not going to care if it's not somewhere they can watch it. Brandon, I just put up a ton of the versus Muay Thai fights that people can now see. Did they care before they could see it? Probably not. But now they got a chance to see it on media outlets like YouTube and ESPN and other things like that. If it's not for the media, you can go back to the NFL, you can go back to NBA, you can go back to whatever. If somebody's not covering you, it means a lot less. And that might not be fair, but that's real. Brandon, let me hear your take.
Yeah, no, it's just fighters in the media, it goes together, man. Like it's really should be a working relationship. Like saying you're both helping each other out. Like I said, that fighter is getting their brand out there, they're getting that exposure, but also too, you're allowing this interviewer or this media to break, to build their brand as well, where they can get practice on either their interviewing skills or their reporting skills, and that way they can become a person that they know, oh, hey, who's the person to go to, for breaking news, or who's the person to go to for interviews. And those ways say it goes together. Like saying this is something that I want to say went over like last year in the NBA with Draymond Green. I think he actually came out and said it was like, yo, it's athletes and media, they go together. It should be a working relationship. They should be able to help each other out.
Yeah, James, you're both worlds. So tell me.
The word you guys are looking for is a reciprocal relationship, one where both parties benefit.
See, Brandon, that's why he's on the show. The big words.
Exactly.
Hey, man, I said working relationship. Okay, I said a relationship.
Yeah, I said reciprocal. It's a few more syllables, but I use my long reach to keep my brain protected. At any rate. I've interviewed plenty of fighters from Flex Fights. I've had them on my podcast. I've done other podcasts with them. I do interviews with them at the show, during the show, before the show, at the weigh-ins. And they're taking the time to do that kind of stuff with me because they know it's building their exposure. Now, by the same token, it's exposing me to their audiences. I just had I'll talk about my podcast a little later, but I just had one of our friends, Sensei Mike Stein, on my podcast for my 150th episode to review our tournament. And now that exposed me to his whole network. Everybody who's commenting on my posts about that episode is from his school. So he got the time to expose his brand, and I got exposure to the new audience. But here's the other thing we have to remember. So many people who started martial arts, myself included, started martial arts because we weren't the most confident people in the world. And as strong as we become, that little voice in our head always stays a little inconfident. So that's why when you make a joke on your podcast that Conor McGregor looks like his pee would burn a hole right through the USADA cup, Conor's instinct isn't to laugh it off that you made a joke about him. His instinct is to send out all these pictures about how jacked Joe Rogan is, as though Joe Rogan doesn't fully admit that he's on TRT, as though he doesn't say that he would.
He's not getting tested.
Yeah, and he fully admits he'd fail every USADA test under the thing. And Joe has never claimed to be a fighter. He's a Taekwondo champion, a jiu-jitsu black belt, but he knows he's not a fighter, and he's never claimed to be. And for Conor to go to that crazy place of, you've been in the organization this long, you've never taken a fight. Of course not. Of course not. That's not his job. His job is to talk about you, Conor. Listen, I sit right next to the cage at Flex Fights every single month. I'm not getting in there. That's not my role. That's not my job. That's not what I'm there to do. But fighters are sensitive people. They just are. I know if I heard somebody talking about me in a negative light, even if they're right, our first instinct is usually to push back. But sometimes we should settle back and listen and be like, what this guy is saying is true. I've had it where it happened on commentary. I had a fighter just recently. I found out that their coach was complaining on social media about the commentary being biased. But if you watch the fight was going a certain way. And I was talking about what was happening. But they were upset that I didn't mention a couple other things. Well, it was kind of hard to mention that your fighter's opponent missed weight when your fighter was sitting there doing this over and over and over again because their head was getting bounced around. It's I can only talk about what's in front of me, And fighters are, by their nature, sensitive people.
I think, first of all, I'll go a step further. I think most people are sensitive. I think most people are defensive first. Very few people have, and some develop it later in their lives, but humility is not an easy trait. It's not something that comes very easy to most people. And when somebody attacks you, the first thing you want to do is defend yourself. Some people do it quietly and just keep it on their inside voice and don't lash out. Other people, Conor McGregor, right out there, like, didn't even take 5 seconds. Like, oh, you said this, I got something for you too. And I think it's two things. I think one, it's insecurity, but I also think it's not just insecurity of self. I think it's insecurity of protecting your spot. And fighters, especially professional fighters, are on our level where they have to constantly not just, and here we go, Brandon, we're going to lose half our audience, but it's kind of like professional wrestling, like where you get that top spot. If you're the Roman Reigns of the world, you're not necessarily trying to hold other people down, but if they move up, somebody has to move down. And you don't want to be the one to move down. Conor McGregor, for all his losses, his voice, the way he carries himself, has kept him in the conversation of every fighter to come out and call him out after their wins. Conor's lost like 3 or 4 fights, maybe more than that. I don't even have it in front of me at this point. He's only won 1 fight in the last 4 years, and that was against Cowboy. Like, let's be real. He's still a marquee name because of what he does and how he carries himself. The infamous is just as good as the famous when it comes to getting paid. And I think Patty is very, we circle back. I think Patty is very strongly trying to be Conor McGregor. But he doesn't have the charisma that Conor has.
I have to ask your guys' opinion. Do you think that Conor looks at all the fight cards, says, okay, these are the 12 guys that are on the fight card. I'm going to write up a little thing about every one of them. And if anybody says my name or anything even related to Ireland, I've already got the thing ready to shoot it out. Because I feel like with how quick he responds to some of this crap, he's got to have one for John Anik. He's got to have something for Anthony Smith. He's got to have something for Joe Rogan. I'm sure he's got some stuff for Dana too. But I feel like he's got to have just a folder on his phone full of crap ready to send out.
Either him or one of his people, right? Like he probably has an assistant that's constantly like feeding him like, hey, somebody, I don't even think he knows half the people say the shit about him. I don't think he's sitting there watching all this shit. He's on a yacht drinking some champagne or doing whatever he's doing in the gym, jacking up like another 80 pounds. Like, I think he's just honestly, he has people, and those people are like, hey, Conor, this person said something about you. Say this back. Like, I think that's the level I think he's gotten to. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we know he's narcissistic, so he may very well be watching every single thing and responding to every single thing, just like all of us at home on Twitter. But I do think he gets a little bit of help. Brandon, I'll give you the final word.
No, it's just like you said. I just think it's just it should be a working a relationship.
Reciprocal.
Yeah, that exactly that's what you want it to be. But just like I said, sometimes I think just some fighters just don't get it. Like they don't see it as that. They see it as an obligation, something that they have to do, but they don't really want to do it or something like that. Something that's not fun. So that's all I just want to. That's how I just see it. I just see it like, it's just it's a working relationship. It's good for both people.
I think sadly we can agree that 2 times people have come to Ariel and Ariel's 2-0. I think both Shab and Patty are taking the L's on this one. I do enjoy heel Ariel. I do enjoy heel Helwani. I won't lie. That does make me smile. The rest of it, I'm like, whatever. But heel Helwani, I think, is hilarious. All right, guys. Let's make some picks today. UFC Vegas 66. By the way, this will be the last time I say UFC Vegas. Next year, I promise you I will go to the fight night numbers. But I figures we've gone this far. We might as well finish the year with Vegas 66. Jared Cannonier versus Sean Strickland. We also have kind of a, I don't want to say lackluster, kind of like a fall off after all the fights we've had, but Armin Sarukian versus Damir Ismagulov, kind of like a letdown as a co-main event, but still should be a hell of a fight. And then one fight I'm really looking forward to, we'll talk about Alessandro Nono Costa making his debut. He's the Luke's Fight League flyweight champion. He won on Dana White's Contender Series, wasn't super impressive, just got the win, which, Dana's always looking for the knockout or whatever the case is. So he gets his call up with a short notice fight. So interested to see him fight. Bobby Green's on his card, Drew Dober, a lot of exciting fights. Let's jump into the main event, guys. James, you're our guest. I'll let you start off. Jared Cannonier, Sean Strickland. Who you got, and tell us why.
It's one of those pick'em fights to me. I don't know what the odds are, but to me, Strickland just has that dog in him. And we've seen Cannonier wilt under the pressure sometimes. And if there's anything Strickland does exceptionally well, it's pressure. And I'd be interested. I'm just interested to watch this fight. I think this is one of those fights where no matter who wins, the fans win. And if you're asking me to make a pick, I think I'm going to have to go with Sean Strickland.
Brandon?
I'm going to be the opposite. I'm going with Jared Cannonier, man. I think Cannonier has the power to stop Sean Strickland. We see that Sean Strickland will, like you said, he will walk forward. He most likely will walk forward with his hands down as well. And I just think Killer Gorilla will take care of business, put his lights out. Like I said, he comes from a good camp. Like I said, you see his losses, but his losses are to elite fighters like Whitaker and Izzy. But the man is always in a fight. Like you saw in his Whitaker fight when it went 5 rounds, he was still in there in the 5th round. I think it'll be the same thing here with Sean Strickland. Like saying Sean Strickland maybe can start to wear him down. But I mean, if this thing's going 5 rounds, Cannonier's still in it with that power. And saying he catches him, lights are out.
I had a tough time deciding this one because I think Cannonier showed me the one thing that Sean Strickland probably could do to win this fight was use Sean. Sean doesn't do it very often, but he does have very good wrestling. But if you look at the Cannonier versus Brunson fight, Cannonier shut Brunson's wrestling down. Like, he has very good takedown defense. And I think Sean Strickland exposed himself in that Pereira fight that, yeah, you can land a bunch of vicious combos and maybe he could get Cannonier out there early. But if you hang in there tough, you're going to leave that chin out. And Cannonier is a world-class kickboxer. He's going to knock you out just like Pereira did. So I'm taking Cannonier in this one too. I think he'll eventually catch Strickland, who, just like I said, leaves his chin out there a little bit too much, getting a little bit too bold once he starts striking with you. He wants to kill or be killed. Well, sometimes you get killed. And that's just unfortunate. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. Co-main event, guys. Sarukian versus Ismagulov. Brandon, I'll let you go. Who's taking this one?
I'm going with Ismagulov. The man has an amazing jab, and I just think he's popping that jab out all night long, and just really with the jab alone. Like I said, the man can strike. He's good. He's basically, he's good. He's good everywhere this fight goes. I think he's gonna get the job done, and I think he's gonna let people know that he should be top 10 instead of top 15. James,
who do you think is gonna win?
I have to agree with the mechanic on this one. Ismagulov, for everything he said, I think his striking is very, very clean. And to me, clean striking is a great way to avoid any of the takedown threat for sure. And everything Brandon said is very much true about Ismagulov.
I think matchups make fights. And I agree with both you guys. I'm actually taking Demir as well. But because of this one thing. So Amir's last fight, I know you think I'm doing it to hold on to my picks. I know
exactly. I know you are, bro. The same as me.
I know. No, hear me out. Okay. Last fight, he looked very, very impressive against Gurham. Kudaladzhi got the split decision win. On the other side of it, Sakarian lost to Gamrot, and Gamrot lost to Kudaladzhi in his debut. Matchups make fights, and if you're going on simple math, you got to take Demir because he beat the guy that took care of both those guys, right? But at the same time, Sakarian is a different matchup. But I think everything you guys said was right, and I think his striking and keeping a distance and being able to mix things up is going to win this fight. I don't think Sakarian's as good as people think he is. I think he's good, but I don't think he's great. And so I think this will be a good fight to show somebody a lot of people don't know who exists. So I think he's going to take this fight. James, I'll let you jump in this if you want to, but every week, Brandon and I also pick a separate fight to highlight. So I'll give you a second if you want to look at the fights and choose one to look at. Brandon, what's your fight pick for the night?
Man, so many options for me. You know me, man, big Drew Dober fan out here and everything like that. But I'm actually going to go with a welterweight bout. I'm going to go with Jake Matthews. I'm going to go with the Jake Matthews fight, and I'm picking Jake Matthews to win. Like I said, he's another prospect that they're really high on. And man, he's been looking good his last few fights, and I think he's going to continue winning ways.
Smellsburger's tough. That's a tough pick. My fight pick, like I said, Nono Costa making his debut. This guy was dominant at Luke's Fight League. He went to Dana White's Contender Series. He got the win. It just wasn't, the flashy thing Dana was looking for. Comes back to Luke's Fight League last month and gets a 12-second knockout. You're talking about a guy who's a master jiu-jitsu guy, black belt multi times over as far as a jiu-jitsu guy goes, part of the Brazilian Warriors team with Diego Lopez and all those guys. A lot of experience in and around the UFC. This is his first crack in the UFC. And I think going against a very tough Amir Albazi, I still think he gets the win. I think his grappling on the ground is top notch, and he has the striking that people don't realize can mix it up to set up his takedowns, to set up the ground. When he gets on top of you, he can go from ground and pound to transition to take your back or a number of other submissions. So I'm taking Nono Costa in his debut. Hopefully the Luke's Fight League guys don't make me look bad 2 weeks in a row. James, is there a fight you're looking at?
Alex Caceres, Julian Erosa just has fun fight written all over it. Yeah. Two young guys, long, fancy strikers, both a little elusive, both have some interesting things that they throw out there.
Yo, tell Beckham to chill, man. Oh, wait, or is that Slade? Mine. Oh, is that Slade?
Yeah, those
both got dogs out here.
My dog's a small dog. You hear like a yip, yip, yip. Like, you don't hear the deep bass.
My guys sound like there's about to be a murder. There's 200 pounds of German Shepherd running to my front door right now. But Julian Erosa and Alex Caceres has fun fight written all over it. That's one where no matter who gets the decision or the finish or whatever, we all win just for watching it. Though if I had to pick who I think is the trickier fighter, who I think is probably going to walk away with the win, I'm going to say Caceres. I think he's got more tools in the toolbox than Erosa.
Bruce Leroy. Real quick, I'll run down the card and then we will get out of here. 14 fights in total this weekend to finish up the year for UFC. We mentioned a bunch of the fights. Brandon touched on it, Drew Dober versus Bobby Green. Also, I always butcher his name, but Michael Alexiachuk. Did I actually say it right for once?
That sounds right.
Versus Cody Brundage. Cheyenne, formerly Bays, but Cheyenne Bleesmas versus Corey McKenna. I'm surprised Brandon didn't take the ladies' fight. Julian Marquez still looking for his date with Miley Cyrus, facing Darren Wynn. Another Nurmagomedov in action, Saeed versus Saeed Yukov, Kakramanov, Rafa Garcia versus Brian Battle, another Ultimate Fighter guy, going against Fakhretdinov, Dvorak versus Cape, and then Morozov versus Newsom to start the night. I don't think we make it with 14 fights to the fight night, but that's why they load up these cards in case anybody falls off. Otherwise, we're going to have a very long Saturday watching a ton of fights. James, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us this week. Flex Fight Series is coming up this weekend. You want to tell people about it?
Oh, my goodness. Speaking of loaded cards, so 30 fights in total between amateur kickboxing, amateur MMA, pro MMA, and pro kickboxing. We have 4 pro MMA fights, including the pro MMA debut of Renzo Gracie, New York City star, Rocco Giambroni. This guy has been a standout in our flex cage. He was supposed to make his pro debut back in September, had his opponent fall out very late notice, huge cut on his opponent's head. So he had to have a kickboxing bout with somebody at a very late notice. But then we have the return of, I call him Flex Fights Boogeyman, Adam Livingston. He's a product of Long Island MMA. And this is his second pro fight. And for the second fight in a row, it looks like, if you look at the guy's record, you're like, really? This is who they're having him fight? But Adam just can't get people to stay signed on the dotted line. His last fight, he had 6 opponent changes. Wow. This fight was no different. So he's fighting somebody who came out of retirement and said, oh, this guy's talking all this junk, he can't get a fight. I'll come and fight him, which that's tough talk. That's definitely tough talk. But Adam is the star. He's looking to keep his O and go to 2-0. Of course, we have the Art of MMA sponsored Shedrick Goodridge. He's looking for his first win.
Fighters First sponsored.
Oh, my mistake. I apologize. But nonetheless, looking for his first win in the flex cage. He's had a rough go of it. He's fought some really tough opponents in a couple of pro kickboxing bouts. Alpha Torre, who I'll touch about a little later, and Kareem Klein, both really, really tough fights. But
it's nice to get him back to MMA.
Yeah, he's got a tough match ahead of him in Hugh McKenna. Hugh McKenna is just huge. There's no other way to describe the man. Standout wrestler, great striking, very good at everything. So that has good fight written all over it. We have 3 amateur title fights, including Savannah Graham making her return to the flex cage. We have 2 pro kickboxing fights, the return of Enrique Lopez, who's a heavyweight powerhouse and a powerhouse personality too. Not to mention the guy who I refer to as Flex Fights style bender, Alpha Torre, I mentioned earlier, holds a win over Shedrick Goodridge. He's undefeated.
He's a dynamic striker.
Oh my gosh, isn't he ever? He's got such super solid fundamentals. He's not out there throwing crazy spinning kicks or anything like that. The craziest he gets is a flying knee, but he sets it up so well and uses his distance so well that you're not sure if it's going to be a step-in jab or a knee hitting you. And he's just so elusive. And on top of that, big personality that absolutely loves to fight. Last time
the only thing I would say about him is that he's kind of a slow starter. Like I saw like Cedric kind of light him up early, and then he took all of it and then just turned around and like put Cedric out.
Yeah, he had another fight just recently. I want to say it was last month. I don't remember if it was last month or the month before. But knockout via head kick in the first round. So to take your slow starter thing away, just he did a little.
Cedric fight was, I think, in the first round too. It's just like as the round progressed.
Shedrick, I believe, was the second round. I'm pretty
second
sure.
round, okay.
Or third round. It might have even been there. But nonetheless, just right over the shoulder, pink, knocked out Vibov Shetty with a head kick. And he's the nicest guy ever. huge personality. He sits there and cheers everybody on at the weigh-ins. Every person who weighs in, yeah, baby, we're going to put on a show tomorrow. Everybody. He's doing just an amazing person, and you want nothing but good things for him because he's so nice, and he's got a big test ahead of him. We have Melissa Ballack from Team Tiger Schulman's making her MMA debut. Can't wait for that one. So listen, if you're loving the sound of what I'm putting out there, you can either come down live, watch it all at Amazora in Queens. You can buy tickets at flexfights.com, or you can listen to me call every single fight on the pay-per-view, throwdownsports.com. Once again, throwdownsports.com. They've got me on that desk for the entire fight card. I'm going to hopefully I can sneak away and use the bathroom at some point, but otherwise they're not getting rid of me.
We got to do some cutaway to the fighters. I got to give you a moment.
Yeah, seriously.
It's like, look at this fighter warming up. Hurry up, James. Hurry up.
Luckily I know I got to find one of the close bathrooms that's close to the commentary station.
And you also got a podcast, right? Tell people about that.
I most certainly do. It's called Sensei's Weekly Mindset. It is wherever podcasts are found: audio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. It's on YouTube as well. A lot of times it's just me talking about martial arts mindsets, lessons that I've learned throughout my career that I teach to my students and so forth. Sometimes it's about flex fights or things I picked up from there. I've done some interviews. I actually, in my 7th episode ever, had Dwayne Bang Ludwig on my podcast. That was awesome. And then I had, in my opinion, a bigger star, Sensei Mike Stein, for my 150th episode this past week. There'll be an episode. There's an episode every Wednesday. Don't miss it. Again, wherever podcasts are found, you can find me everywhere on the internet at my link tree for more information on flex fights, my school, my podcast, linktr.ee/Sensei Leonelli, SENSEILEONELLI.
No worries. We'll put all of that in the description for you guys, so you can find all about James. Of course, Brandon the Mechanic, Cuttino, doing your thing. You talked off air, have fights possibly coming up next year, so we'll talk about that sooner as they come. I know Brandon's trying to run out the door. Real quick, let you guys know this is our last episode of the season. Nothing really coming up until New Year's with Ryzen and all that stuff with Bellator. Maybe Brandon and I will hop on to talk about something. I'll be traveling over the holidays, so it's kind of tough. But, of course, you know, you got AJ McKee and you got Pitbull and all those guys going over to fight some of Ryzen's best. That will be on New Year's between Ryzen and Bellator. But last UFC card, so we're taking off the rest of the holidays. You'll see us in January as always. But everybody have a Merry Christmas. Have a happy holidays, Happy New Year. We're looking forward to seeing y'all in the new year. And if you really want to make me happy, go shop Fighters First. Want to make Brandon happy? Go shop Fighters First and buy the Mechanic collection. There you go. Brandon, any final words?
Thank you everybody for rocking with us this whole year. Thank you, James, for coming in and hanging out with us. Like I said, I know we talked about getting you on here, and I'm glad it just worked out. You know, timing-wise, we're having Flex on there and everything like that this weekend. So I just want to thank everybody. Remember, like, subscribe, and like I said, you know, so the way you want to support us is by doing that, right? Like, subscribing, telling everybody about this show, but also too, hey, shop at FightersFirst.shop. You know, like I said, you get a hoodie, get a T-shirt, get something.
James, thank you. You're always welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Art of MMA for the year 2022. Hopefully we kept you entertained. We'll see y'all next year. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, all of that amazing stuff. For James, Brandon, and myself, we're out.